Welcome to the Cybersecurity and Privacy Protection Seminar. I'm Daryl Forte, owner of Everlast Software. Today I'm going to be discussing passwords. Now when I teach these seminars, the first thing I start with is passwords because it's one of the most crucial mechanisms to help protect yourself. The first thing I do is show this chart to people to completely shock them because most people are completely unaware of this situation. So the source of this particular information is from Zato.net from a consultant named Mark Burnett. He had spent years collecting passwords, millions of them in fact, and what he found out was quite shocking. First, 40% of all the passwords that he had obtained were on a top 100 list. So think about that. He has millions of passwords. 40% of those were the same 100 passwords. 71% of all passwords were on a top 500 list. So basically 3/4 of millions of passwords were on a top 500 list. And that might sound absurd, but it's crazy how psychology comes into play with people and what they choose for passwords. So that's the first thing I wanted to show. Now, you may be aware of some of these methods, but I'm guessing that most likely you're not aware of all of these. So hackers will try to hack passwords in various ways. The first way they will do this is what's called a dictionary attack. And essentially, it's what the name implies. They load up a dictionary, whether it's English, German, whatever kind of dictionary they have, depending on what kind of information they're going after. And it's just a bunch of words, like daisy, transportation. It could even be names, like combinations like John Doe, etc. So if your password is in the dictionary, this is a typical time it takes to hack a password on a standard laptop with a single processor. As long as the database you're trying to hack is local and it's pretty typical routines, a half a second and that password will be hacked. I don't care how long the word is in the dictionary, like transportation, that's a pretty long word, doesn't matter, half a second. Now how do I know about these times? Well, I wrote software in Java to actually do this, and I can pick any kind of word I want, and that's the amount of time it would take, no matter what it was. So Hollywood likes us to believe that hackers are sitting away at a keyboard, typing away, trying to hack your password. That's not typical. Most hacking is done by automated means, and it's all done by software. So a hacker will load up a program, or several, that just try to run through all these combinations in an automated fashion. That's why it can happen so quickly. Now, a lot of sites are going, like websites for example, are going to blocking after so many failed attempts. That's a good thing. However, keep in mind that just because a website or a web interface blocks after so many failures, that doesn't mean that a hacker did not get into their server already. If they are logged into that website server, for example, then they could be completely bypassing that and going after passwords straight in the database. So just a little caveat here, these password hacking features I'm talking about here assumes it's all local. Okay, so let's say a hacker tries a dictionary and it didn't work because your password wasn't in the dictionary. Then some of them will fall back to what I call an enhanced dictionary attack. And essentially this is just a sophisticated way of doing dictionary attacks. For example, you may have a password daisy5, or some people try to replace the A's in words with an @ symbol, or O's with a 0, or S's with a $sign. Those are very typical, again, psychology related issues that human beings do that hackers know about. So all these combinations I have listed here, John Doe with a $sign, maybe just some keyboard combinations like sequential ABCD, ABCD 1, 2, 3, even repeats of the same characters like XY42, XY42. All of those types of things could be what I call an enhanced dictionary tag. So anyway, the software I wrote, you'll see that it only took 5 seconds to run through every combination of word that was in the dictionary using these special patterns I've talked about here. So Daisy 1, Daisy 2, it doesn't matter what numbers you put on there. I wrote it to do up to 2 digits on the front of the word, 2 digits on the end. It'll do it in 5 seconds. And you can make this as sophisticated as you want. I could put extra logic in and make my hacking mechanism even smarter. So anyway, that's the second way. If all of that fails because you have pretty much a random password or it's a really long password, then it will fall back to what's called a brute force attack. Brute force just runs through every single combination of letter, whether it's upper or lowercase, numbers, special characters, and just try all the combinations. So a typical time on this laptop I tested on for 4 characters took 0.125 seconds. Now nobody uses a 4-character password anymore, at least I sure hope not. 5 characters is 3.6 seconds. 6 characters took 4.3 minutes, so now we're talking minutes. You get to 7 characters, it was 2.5 hours. So you'll notice what's happening there. It's exponentially increasing by adding a single character. So if we were to go to 8 characters here, instead of hours, we'd be talking days. 9 characters, you're talking months or years, and so forth. So password length is the most important factor, besides not being in the dictionary, for protecting your passwords. So I have clients ask me, well, what should I do? I mean, I have 50 plus accounts. How am I going to come up with all these different passwords to protect myself? And what I tell people do, there's 2 different mechanisms. One is use a phrase or several phrases that's easy for you to remember. And the example I give is fried green tomatoes. Everybody knows what that is. It's just a saying. And don't just use that. You need to put numbers in the password. You need to put special characters. And then that base password mechanism can be used for other sites or accounts. So for example, I might do fried green tomatoes, and after fried I put the number 77. Then in between the word green, so I start the word GR, I'll put a $sign, and then I'll finish the word green. So GR $EEN, and then maybe an @ symbol, and then tomatoes, maybe what I'll do is replace the M with a 2. So it's going to pass all dictionary attacks, it's going to pass enhanced dictionary attacks, and the password's so long it would take a supercomputer billions of years to run to hack that password. Now the other thing I mentioned is to think of using a password manager, a really secure password manager. Make sure it uses really good encryption, and you have a really powerful master password protecting those other passwords. That's how they work. You'll have that master password, never use it anywhere else, never give it to anybody, and use that to encrypt your other passwords. Then if you're out somewhere and you can't remember a password, you could maybe pull it up on your phone, or if you have a laptop, you could pull it up that way. Now I will say that that is not as safe as having a physical piece of paper that you put like in a safe somewhere, a physical safe. That's the best way. But you are giving up some convenience for that. So that's your call as to what you want to do. But password managers can be vulnerable to malware if you get a keylogger on your system, or even potentially things that are capturing your screenshot. Depending on how the password manager is designed, it could be vulnerable to those types of things. So anyway, things for you to research and think about. So what I wanted to do here is show you password combinations and how many different iterations there are based on the length of the password. So if you have an 8-digit password and you're using 26, this is English, using 26 lowercase letters, uppercase, the 10 digits, punctuation, 33, and special characters, so that would be, at symbols, asterisks, plus signs, those types of things. And this is assuming that the website or account you're using doesn't have limitations on your requirements, that they're just letting it wide open and you can do whatever you want. Here are some numbers for you to think about. It's an 8-digit number, so 4 characters. You have 95 possible combinations per character. That's how you get 81 million. If you go to an 8-character password, you're going to have 16 digits of numbers here. So you're talking 6 quadrillion combinations for an 8-character password. Just going up 1 character, that number jumps to 18 digits. Now look at the difference here. Now you're up to 630 quadrillion. Let's bump it all the way to 16-character password. It's a 32-digit number. You can see here how huge this is. So that right away tells you the number of combinations that a computer would have to brute force if you have a really good password that's not in a dictionary. Then if you get up, let's just bump it way up to 32 characters, which I know is ridiculous. But you can see how long and how many combinations there are here. That's why I was telling you that you can get to a point where supercomputers could run for billions or trillions of years and never be able to hack that password. Now, here is, let's say that you drop out uppercase letters, because what I wanted to explain is how password length matters the most compared to special schemes. A lot of sites will force you to use an uppercase letter. Well, really that's not super beneficial compared to having a longer password, because 69 characters instead of 95 possible choices. Take a look at the numbers here. 69 raised to the 8th power. It's still a 15-digit number. So when we had 95 combinations, it was 16 digits. We only lost a single digit by excluding all uppercase. That's not a big deal. If you look at a 16-character password, you're still talking about a 30-digit number when you're not even using any uppercase letters in your password. So don't fall for what other security experts will tell you about, oh, well, you should have uppercase letters in there. That really doesn't matter much. The length of the password matters a lot more. Now, what if we exclude even special characters? So now we're only talking about lowercase letters and 10-digit numbers. That's all you can have in your password. Well, let's take a look. So that's 36 raised to the 16th power. It's still a 25-digit number. Look how many combinations that is. So what I wanted to prove to you here is a 16-character password with just lowercase letters and 10 digits is much stronger than using all those combinations and it only being 9 characters in length. So the length is what matters the most. Okay, next slide here. So here's some reasons why I tell people they want to have different passwords. Sometimes I've made this mistake, and I'm sure most people have. You're in a hurry, you're on a website, and you thought you had focus in the password box, or maybe you hit the tab button on your keyboard and you thought it tabbed in the password, but you accidentally typed it into the login box where it's clear text, and then you hit the submit button or the login button. Well, a lot of web servers will log when someone fails to log in. And a lot of them will even say the login ID. It'll put this in a log. So guess what? Your password is now in clear text, and a log file somewhere sitting on the server. So any administrator that has access to that log file can see what your password is. That's just one example. There's many other things that can happen that I didn't mention about that, but okay, that's one example. Technical staff or IT staff can have access to your password even if the network is encrypted. So here's how encryption works in a standard HTTPS situation when you're logging into a website. When you type in your password and it shows the little asterisk and it masks your password, so if someone's standing behind your shoulder they can't see it, that's not encryption. The encryption hasn't taken place yet. That is still decrypted in the memory of the computer and in the web browser. When you hit the login button, now the encryption takes place. So that password is sent across the network encrypted. So anybody in between you and that server cannot spy on your password. They won't be able to see what it is. However, once it arrives on the server, it is then decrypted. So that web server has your original password. Now it could be a hash of your password, which if it's designed well, that's what it should be, and that would be a good thing. Regardless, it is not encrypted anymore. So it is possible for an IT staff member to get that password. So that's why you don't want to use the same password everywhere. If you have your Facebook and your LinkedIn and some blogging site all using the same password, and you have some disgruntled employee working there or some lowlife stealing passwords, they have it. And now all they need to do is figure out the other accounts you have, and they'll be able to get straight into your accounts. So that's one example. Now there's all kinds of poorly written software. I've developed my own software and I've been a consultant in many different places, and I'm shocked at how horrible the architecture is for a lot of systems, even in huge companies. I don't want to name names, but I've been in huge companies where you would be shocked at how horribly designed their software is. The bad architecture in of itself can expose your passwords. And whether you like it or not, there's nothing you can do about that. So by using different passwords in different places, if one site screws up, you're only messed up with that one area. You're not exposed everywhere else. As I mentioned earlier, there's these things called keyloggers or keyboard sniffers that if you happen to unfortunately get on your computer, it may be capturing your keystrokes. So those are the worst, because even if you have the longest password in the world, it doesn't matter because that software is snatching up all your keystrokes and now they have your password. Those can even break password managers. Standard password managers. There are ones that can get kind of away from that and have extra security measures. But regardless, those are the types of things that you want to have a different password in case it steals it. Then you're not screwed everywhere else. Some software will display a single character at a time when you are typing your password. Phones are pretty notorious for this because you want to see what you had typed. So you hit a key and it shows you maybe a J, and then it puts the asterisk. You hit the next number, let's say for example a 2, it shows the 2 and then shows an asterisk. So as you're typing, if you had some kind of screen capture software running on that device, they can piece it together and see your whole password. Another example. Software vulnerabilities could exist that exposes your password. Just a couple examples is Google itself does caching of websites. And there was an issue with Cloudflare where the caching was actually taking websites that had bad architecture, but it was caching it and saving it and exposing this. People could actually do searches and find massive amounts of passwords and things that they shouldn't have been able to find. But that's an example of why you don't want to have the same password everywhere. Sometimes you may need to give a family member or an administrator a password for them to do something. Well, if you do that, you can't trust what they're going to do with it. Not necessarily because they're malicious, but you don't know people's behavior. They may write it down somewhere on a post-it note and leave it somewhere. You can't control how other people are going to behave. So if you gave them your master password that you use everywhere else, then there's a good chance that somebody else could pick that up and use it. There's a special type of attack called a cross-site scripting attack that can result in cookies, which are a special little piece of information that web browsers use, or passwords to malicious domains. Sometimes these XSS attacks can expose that kind of information to people that you don't want to have it. Again, this is because of poorly designed software, but those are just a few examples. Now, some people will ask me, well, what types of things do I need to have strong passwords on? And I tell them really everything you want to have a strong password on. And here's why. Someone might say, well, Facebook. I don't care if someone hacks my Facebook. But yes, you will. And the reason is because you've probably gone to a blogging site or a forum or somewhere else, and you'll notice at the bottom it says log in with your Facebook account. Well, guess what? If you happen to have your Facebook account hacked, someone could go around impersonating you and acting like they are you, and think of the damage they could do to you socially. Think of all the trouble they could get you into. They could make all kinds of terrible comments somewhere. They could do criminal activity. So just because one site you don't think is significant, it could have major ramifications, maybe later, maybe it doesn't now, but later in the future. So just always keep that in mind, that you want to really have a secure password everywhere. If you use the scheme I was telling you about, it makes it a lot easier, because then you're basically just shifting around special characters and numbers, and you only have a handful of phrases that you work with. Now, a lot of clients that I work with, when I start to work on their computers, if they need computer repair, for example, many of them are guilty of not having a password on their operating system. For example, they won't have a password to log into their Mac, or they won't have a password to log into Windows on their PC. And the reason is because they say, well, this is in my house, nobody's going to come into my house. And I tell them, yes, but you got to remember, nowadays almost everybody is connected to the internet 24 hours a day. And most people have a wireless router. Your neighbor could be hacking into your wireless router, and if they get in and you don't have a password on your computer, it makes it so much easier for them to then hack into that computer. Someone on the internet, if they figure a vulnerability out in your firewall, they could get into your network and start hacking your computer. So you want a password on your operating system. Security is always a trade-off for convenience. You can't have things secure and expect the convenience to be the same. You're always going to have, extra steps you're going to have to jump through. That's why it's secure. So I highly recommend using a strong password everywhere, including the operating system. Now, I will say, just because you have a strong password on your operating system doesn't mean someone can't get in. There could be vulnerabilities in the operating system. If I have local access to a computer, I don't care if it's a Mac, Linux, Windows, I can hack that computer in about 5 minutes if I have access to it by booting outside the operating system and completely bypassing the password. Now, if you have encrypted files on the hard drive, I won't be able to access them, but 99% of people out there don't encrypt their files. So security is like an onion. It has different layers. The more layers you put in there, the more secure you're going to be. It might protect you from, this particular thing might protect you from 7 issues, but there might be 10 others that can get through that. Well, if you had another layer of security, that might block 5 out of those 10. So those are just things to keep in mind, and I just wanted to talk about these password issues here because it's very important. There's a lot of misconceptions. So I hope you enjoyed this, and if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. The website's at the bottom of the video there. Thank you very much.